If I could, I surely would.
I'd rather sail away like a swan that's here and gone. A man gets tied up to the ground. He gives the world its saddest sound, its saddest sound.
I'd rather be a hammer than a nail. Yes, I would. If I only could, I surely would.
I'd rather sail away like a swan that's here and gone. A man gets tied up to the ground. He gives the world its saddest sound, its saddest sound.
I'd rather be a forest than a street. Yes, I would. If I could, I surely would.
I'd rather sail away like a swan that's here and gone. A man gets tied up to the ground. He gives the world its saddest sound, its saddest sound.
I'd rather feel the earth beneath my feet. Yes, I would. If I only could, I surely would.
Hi, you've guessed it. How the devil are you? I thought I would talk today about The Godfather. And I say that because he's Italian. And it might be slightly prejudiced. I don't know. I don't care. So, come stai? Buongiorno. Tutti. Il tempo è cattivo. Okay, let's talk about Domenico Di Ceglie. So he is the man. He's such an amazing man. Shall I read you something about him? But basically, he is the man often cited by everybody as the man that brought this utter shit of transitioning children to this country. So I think he's a good person to look at. He would be him and Penny Carmichael. They would be the first two people on my list of who shall we make criminally liable for eradicating the sexual function and fertility of children via the NHS. So they would be like the, they would be like the horse's head, or perhaps the person that cut off the horse's head. They would be the I don't know anyone from The Godfather, so I can't say. But they would be the hitmen, the nasty, the mastermind. Maybe they don't even do the hits. Maybe they just do the orders, like, oh, just shoot him. Look, you can take my impressions or leave them. It doesn't bother me. So I'll tell you what people say about him, or maybe probably what he says about himself. And this is from this publication is, I think I'm right in saying July 2002. So Domenico Di Ceglie. An opportunity to pause. So this is what he says. This is what he says about children. Let me also just say, before I say anything more, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. And there is no way on God's earth I would ever think it was right to disrupt the puberty of a healthy child. But then I haven't made a business, haven't made a career out of pretending that I can fix people's brains with medication. So I haven't done that. I think we should be quite suspicious of the whole industry around it. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I think any medication that isn't like a physical, like blood thinner, etc., something like that, any medication that requires somebody for their disorder, whatever, to be on lifelong medication, I think there has to be a different way. And I know that's going to be controversial, but I don't really mind being controversial. It's something I quite enjoy, actually. So I think if somebody came to you in adolescence and the treatment that you thought was a good idea would be to put them on a medical pathway for the rest of their lives so that you could give them something that fought with their actual natural body, natural hormones, etc., then I think that in itself should be something that we should all be very suspicious of. So this is what he says. An opportunity to pause and reflect on how one got to a particular point in the development of one's own interest should not be missed. In this case, it is the creation of a service for children and adolescents facing gender identity problems. Remember, these are his words, not mine. This remains a mystery to me and is still surprising. Yeah, me too, Domenico, me too. And it's still surprising how apparently unpredictable sets of events determine shifts in interest and professional activities. I don't know. Maybe it was a delusion of grandeur that made you feel so special, so very special. In my case, it was an encounter with a teenager in the early 1980s. So this is when he began to think, how can I totally ruin a child's body? How can I invent something and think myself so wonderful and powerful that I'm going to introduce this whole demonic, harmful area of medicine into the UK? Who had been referred by a colleague, Dr. Jill Veet, to the adolescent department of the Tavistock Clinic, who was claiming that she was a boy, but in a female body. That's about the first bit of language that I've really agreed with, claiming. I knew a little about the subject, but I decided to take the case out of curiosity and perhaps to expand my training experience. I thought I would also learn about what it meant to be male or female and the differences between the two. I reckon you could go with vagina, penis. That's just me. After an initial assessment, I offered this girl, or should I say boy, psychotherapy that was accepted. The impact of this relationship was an unexpected one. I learned very little about sexuality, as a good deal of the sessions were spent in silence. My patient would say a few sentences, and I would make a few interpretations. The end result was that I could recall very accurately what happened verbally in the session, but what went on non-verbally is another story. I got the impression that there was something very profound about her sense of identity, being a boy, which could not easily be explained, and that was fundamental to her being. Remember, he's a psychiatrist. So he's already met people that might think they're Jesus, or might be anorexic, or might focus on, I don't know, a limb that they want to remove, or might focus on the fact that they've got a bigger nose than they really have. And it's totally the focus of their lives. So this isn't someone that's just walked in and gone, do you know what? They really believe it. This is supposedly an expert. Colleagues were saying that she was confused about her gender. Well, colleagues, you shouldn't have been using that word. I discovered instead that I would become at times confused about the sessions about her identity, where she seemed very clear that she was a boy, and there was nothing more to find out about this. I was at times made to feel extremely curious. Oh, that's so heartwarming. In the sessions, only to find out that my curiosity would be frustrated and that it was pointless to pursue my inquiries. I started to read the work of Robert Stoller and other literature on transsexualism. Right, and then it goes on, and that's the only free bit. I mean, I probably could pay, but that's the only free bit of this particular extract of this article that he's written. So rather than him saying, I want to find out why she thinks it, he's beginning to kind of these themes of innate gender. There was something new, foundation, real profound, rather than accepting that, like all other fields that he must have worked in before, this is a response to something, this is something in somebody's brain, it's not real. And what he's done there is he's sort of said that your innate sense of something, your sense of who you are, can be at odds with actually what you are. So he's accepting that premise right from the off. So right from the 1980s, he's beginning to think in his kind of, oh my God, what have I come across? Aren't I marvelous? He's beginning to think that there is something genuine about someone that has a body that says that they're female, that there's some other aspect to being female that isn't in our physical bodies, which we know is nonsense. Okay? So let's have a look to a so this has got the architects of what became and is still becoming one of the most despicable, vile scandals that have ever existed in most of our lifetimes. And what makes it worse than other things, so there's other things that I don't agree with, like FGM, I don't agree with circumcision, but these things were started with sort of insane witchcraft and lack of sanitation, right? And early understandings about human anatomy and control issues and all the stuff around circumcision in America, about puritanical crap. And it still goes on, but that's a hangover from backward thinking. That's what that is. And I'm sorry if you do it for religious reasons, but I would also say it's backwards. To slice the foreskin off a baby boy is nuts. Backwards, nuts. Not excusable in my book. However, this is new. These are new types of butchery, especially on children. Brand new to say, bind your breasts and be careful how you breathe. Brand new to say, yes, what we can do is we can slice off your testicles, we can fold up your penis inside, we can keep the little tip of the penis so you've got some sexual function, or we're going to eradicate your body developing. So this is new. And it's this sort of, what's very interesting about this is it's very pedestrian. So it's really ordinary. It's really ordinary people who think maybe they think they're extraordinary, but it's really run of the mill. There's nothing exceptional or amazing that happened that you can say, oh my God, well, of course they did that. No, this is vanity. This is vanity and power. That's the two elements here that have led us into a situation where something like the Chelsea and Westminster is hoping to do 200 a year of Frankenstein flesh around near a girl's sort of pelvic area, pretending to be a penis. Like it is so demonic. It is so demonic. It is the closest I've ever thought that actually Satan might exist. So let's have a look. Usual suspects, and the first person we're going to hear talk is Penny. Now, as usual, I haven't listened to all of this because nobody has got the sanity to listen to it twice. So some of it we might listen to together. But I just want you to remember when you listen to Penny, I want to call her Penny Lancaster, which is so totally wrong. Penny Carmichael, just remember that there's been whistleblowers. So Sue Evans blew the whistle and started raising concerns in 2003 and blew the whistle in 2004. And her husband, who was the ex-governor of Tavistock, also raised serious concerns, and Dr. David Bell after them. But the first person at the Tavistock, doesn't matter what you heard, the first person at the Tavistock to really start raising serious questions about, I don't like this, was about 2003, 2004. And all of these people, so Domenico and Penny, they would have known about these concerns and they simply ignored them.
Everyone else in the room, and in the tone of their questions and in the manner in which they approach the topic. And as you've seen when you joined the room, the meeting is being recorded, and it's our hope that we're able to share the recording from tonight after the event. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Polly, and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Law. So a very warm welcome to you all, and thank you so much.
Every single one of these people sat in this meeting, every one of them is okay with the Tavistock sterilizing children. They're either okay or they're not, and they've said nothing.
Much for coming along in the evening. I've heard Domenico's talk, and I think it's a really stimulating talk, and I hope we'll have time for some reflections and questions at the end of this. So many of you will know Domenico, I'm sure. Domenico founded the Gender Identity Development Service in 1989 at St George's Hospital, and shortly afterwards it moved to the Tavistock where it stayed. In 1995, Domenico set out some therapeutic aims for the service, which included unconditional acceptance and respect for young people's expression of their gender.
What the holy hell? What the holy hell? Right, so that's kind of massive red flag. Number one, we should all be let's just hear that again.
Which included unconditional acceptance and respect for young people's expression of their gender identity. And this isn't a statement about people's trajectories, and within it holds openness to a range of outcomes.
Even the language, right? Even the holds openness. you know, acceptance, hold open. Like, what are you saying, love? That when a child comes in and says, I'm a boy, and they're quite clearly a girl, no matter what else is going on with that child, your instant response is acceptance.
And I guess that's one of the key things I often think about when I think of Domenico, which is his curiosity and also ability to support young people and their families manage uncertainty. Domenico's also written a book, which some of you might have seen in 1998, A Stranger in My Own Body. And I think to have started a service which in 1989 had, I think, 2 young people attending within a year. And
to start a service that started with 2 people, I mean, why? Why would you even start a service? You kind of wonder where what he was connected to, how he was connected, and how just even the inception of that service, would lead. I'm getting messages. Let me just see. Okay, telling me how to pronounce the surname. So when you create a service that's specifically for children, gender identity, so you might have had people up and down the country where their kids go, I want to be a boy, totally ignored. And they might have even said it repeatedly. It's not a thing, kids. Well, you might want to be a boy, but you're not a boy. Like, that's how we would have all dealt with it. But once he started that service, once he said there is fertile ground for you to come and plant this fuckwittery, I think, you know, he is absolutely the man that poisoned the well.
And a service that has grown and grown, and importantly, I think, has extended its reach in terms of equity of access across the.
Because that's a great thing, isn't it, Polly? That it got bigger and bigger, more and more children. You've just brought more and more children into this absolutely psychotic insanity of pretending children could be born in the wrong body.
Country. I think you need to have perhaps a tenacious personality, and I can certainly personally vouch for Domenico's tenacious personality.
We will cut off the tits. We will sterilize the children, all the children. Oh, he's so tenacious.
I came to JIDS over 20 years ago now for a visit.
And I sterilized so many children myself personally. I have really enjoyed taking the sexual function away from children and lying on the state broadcaster where I said that puberty blockers were just a pause when I didn't actually know anything about that myself.
And subsequently was persuaded to come and do a short sabbatical for 6 months. And somehow I'm still here 20 years later. So I think Domenico certainly has a touch of magic about him, really.
Yeah. Sterilize the children. Sterilize all the children.
Domenico's roots are in a psychodynamic perspective, but it's integrated in a framework of group and social dynamics and family work and empirical research. And I think that reflects the philosophy of the integration of several perspectives within the service over the years and continuing. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Domenico for his talk.
Just before we do, just remember, he is the mastermind. He is the key component. You could argue without him, we wouldn't have had a history. It wouldn't have seen this massive explosion of sterilizing children and eradicating their sexual function. If it weren't for this man starting the service back in 1990, whatever she said. And she's very happy that more and more and more kids have gone through the service.
Thank you, Polly, for your very kind introduction, and thank you.
The banality of evil, everyone. The banality of evil.
Laura and the organizing committee to give this talk at the centenary event. I'm sorry that I cannot see people, and so I have no verbal or non-verbal or visual feedback to what I say. So I feel rather lonely there in this room.
Yeah, not as lonely as those kids who can't have any children, Domenico. So, you know, you crack on, love. It might get boring, but I just think it's really important. This is the architect of this whole thing. This is the architect in this country. This is a man who talks about being curious. I was curious what it might be like to eradicate the sexual function of kids. I was curious. Like, I was confused about this girl that, like, this whole concept of gender, this whole idea that how you feel can be at odds with what you are, and you can be taken seriously as an adolescent or a child. You can be taken seriously, and the NHS, doctors, psychiatrists will step in and fuck up your body forever. This is him. This is he.
This presentation describes the early history and the origin of the Gender Identity Development Service, GIDS, and of its model of care and philosophy. Within the centenary events of the Tavistock, it seems particularly appropriate to reflect on the foundation of a service which has a focus on the complex dynamic of identity development, and in particular of gender identity.
Should we just have a look at his
I will do this by...
Let's just have a look. I just wanted to see that slide.
Model through the use of observation and imagination, in the words of Donald Meltzer, as well as of clinical experience and available empirical research.
Empirical research, you say? All right.
This is a painting of Pierre Bonnard. Why to use this painting? Young Women in the Garden is one of the most extreme examples of a painting made over a long period of time. Having started work in 1921, Bonnard put the canvas aside for many years before revisiting and
not sure about you, but I wonder if he's going to compare himself to an artist who's crafted something. Jesus Christ. I mean, a lot of these men and women have delusions of grandeur. They really do think that they are God.
Revising it in 1945. Resuming his work was part of an attempt to rediscover the original experience, bringing it into the present without losing its place in the past. In this presentation, I will use a similar approach to that of Bonnard to 3 cases that I saw in the past and published and disguised. I will look at these cases from a new perspective applied to the case material, their impact in the creation of a model of care for children and adolescents with atypical gender identity development or gender.
Even that, like, this person decided that gender identity is a thing. Like, he's decided that, and he's decided that gender diversity or gender identity development, it's batshit. It's really mad. It's like I could invent the theory of I don't know, life according to Pepperami. And I could say that it's really important, and you know, we know how people feel, because if they go for the red pepperami, then this means that they are just more spicy, which means that they are far more likely to like standing in the rain. And I could create a whole thing around something that really has no basis beyond a load of twats pontificating about what this thing actually is. And language is the key here. I've talked about language since probably way before 2018. But in 2018, I really made language the thing, because all of this stuff only exists in language. It doesn't exist anywhere else. What is gender identity? It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. What is clothing choices? That exists. What is hairstyles? That exists. What is gender identity? Doesn't exist. What is a soul? Doesn't exist. Can't find it.
Diversity in today's language. Case 1. Jennifer, which is not a real name, was 16 when she was referred in the 80s to the adolescent department of the Tavistock Clinic, where I worked as a trainee, following 3 suicidal attempts. She had been assigned female at birth, but perceived herself as
She was a girl. She wasn't assigned anything. She didn't have ambiguous genitalia. She wasn't assigned anything. Her sex was recorded. You see what I mean? Like, this is the same as Cass and Segum and everybody else. All of them that use this language. All of them.
a male. She presented very distressed with depressive episode and a number of features which at the time were considered borderline. Today, we would have looked
So often borderline is a result of trauma. So if you're a woman and you have borderline personality disorder, it is most likely that you have suffered significant trauma.
closely for the presence of autistic spectrum feature, as she had difficulties in communication and avoided eye contact. But
at that time, it was more likely that we talk about gender identity than fucking autism.
at the time, this association has not been discovered as yet. A large part of the session was spent in silence, which pleased me because I could record what went on verbally in great detail and show it to my supervisor. At the time of the referral, Jennifer was still living in a female role, maintained her female name, and wished to be addressed using a female pronoun. She was uncertain.
Can I just say about the pronoun? That's very interesting, isn't it? So I'm just going to decipher some of this. It might take all night, but I'm just going to decipher some of this right now. So she wanted to be a boy. She said she felt like a boy. She wanted to be a boy. And if you're reading the slide as I'm talking, then you'll see why. She wanted to be a boy. But she didn't want to be addressed with male pronouns or a male name. And do you know why? Because nobody had said that that's what you should want at that point. Nobody had said that that was a thing. So even though her case was so profound and enormous that it made this godlike character, this demigod, come up with this whole service and everything, she didn't want to be using male language or a male name. And it's because of this service that then we have all the other stuff that goes with it. But you would argue back in 1980, 1990, whenever this was, wanting to be referred to with male pronouns and a male name wasn't part of the so-called terrifying gender identity disorder. It wasn't part of that story. That came later. So how can this ever have happened?
About physical intervention. Her mother, who had died just before Jennifer came to the clinic, had suffered depression after Jennifer's birth, and her father had been physically violent towards his wife during Jennifer's childhood until they separated.
Wow. Well, that's not clear then, is it? That's not clear why she might actually want to be male if after her mother had her, and this is discussed in the sessions, so after her mother had her, she was depressed and suffered physical violence from a man the whole of this girl's childhood. Fucking hell. And it's this girl, it's this that made him create a whole fucking industry in this country.
During her psychotherapy sessions, she remembered episodes when her father, in fits of temper, had kicked her mother in the stomach. In one session, she admitted, and this was not without a sense of embarrassment and shame, that she had identified with him, an experience that she could not explain.
No, I can explain it. Her mother was weak in her eyes. Her mother was weak and she couldn't protect herself. So she felt shame. She didn't want to be her mother. She thought her mother was pathetic and ridiculous. And it's a lot easier to identify with someone who is doing the hurting than it is to identify with someone who's being hurt. Loads of children in domestic violence situations are more angry with the parent that stays than the parent that causes violence. I know this. I'm no one. I didn't. Jesus.
She loved her mother, and her main aim in life was to do something extraordinary that would have made her mother happy. A bit like the character in the film $1 Million Baby. There was no recollection that Jennifer herself had been physically abused by her father, but witnessing violence between her parents had been a traumatic childhood experience. It is possible to hypothesize that the way Jennifer coped with the fear of damage to her mother and possibly to herself was to identify with a male possessing the strength of a masculine body.
But he still was confused and thought, I'm assuming this is the same girl, but he's still confused and thought that she really did sound like she was male, even though he's telling you why.
Once established, this gave her a sense of survival and also a sense of protecting her mind, in her mind, the damaged mother. A female representation of herself had to be strongly avoided, as it was equated in her mind with being weak and damaged. Another important factor also seemed to play a part. After the birth of the two older sisters, her mother had miscarried a baby boy. And when she told me this, she said, and my mother miscarried the baby. And then there was a long pause. And then she said, and the baby was a boy. I thought she had made a connection between herself and the loss of this child, of this baby. And I didn't say anything because I felt there was no need to say anything. She had made the link herself. 1 year later, Jennifer was born. Jennifer seemed to feel that her mother had expected her to be a boy. And in one of the sessions, she alluded to her mother having psychic quality, as if she had been part of a magical experience in which.
Just remember, he's a psychiatrist or a psychiatrist, I think, who then, on the basis of these early cases, founded a whole department, industry in this country that literally eradicates the fertility and sexual function of children. This is how do you do that? How do you do that?
She and her mother could read each other's mind. This could be an experience that some people within the Tavistock might call projective identification. She had probably received and made her own her mother's wish that she had been a boy. Her mother probably never consciously expressed this wish, but possibly it remained unconsciously active in the relationship between them. 2 years of psychotherapeutic exploration with this young person allowed the therapist, together with Jennifer, to make this partial reconstruction of her childhood relating to her atypical gender identity development. However, any attempts to explore this understanding further with Jennifer led to continuous interruption of therapeutic work. She would disappear for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which might have indicated her extreme resistance and fears of having the foundation.
It just seems like she came to the service with some sort of level of expectation. So she came to have psychotherapy, therapeutic exploration. And he felt that if he'd said, well, look, this is why you feel like that, she wouldn't come back. I might skip on.
Continuity to his atypical gender identity development. And maybe a neuroscientist would have something to say about this.
Hang on, let me just.
Jennifer was able to live in a male role with a male name, and this well-being improved.
Look, switch the pronouns. So she hadn't wanted that at the beginning of therapy, but now she does. And they've already established that her whole identity is an escape from trauma. So they're basically saying that this is a decent therapy for trauma is pretending that you're someone else. It's so fucked up.
He did not attempt suicide again. He settled in a job and he was more able to establish relationships with other people. One might say that therapy had helped him to cope with his well-established gender identity in a better way, to make the transition to a male role, and to give him a sense of hope, an important therapeutic aim. He was eventually referred to an adult service for further treatment. I became aware in working with Jennifer that I was fundamentally dealing with the developing identity and not a psychiatric condition, long before there was a legal recognition.
What? What are you on about, Domenico? What are you talking about? A developing identity, not psychiatric, that is born out of trauma, but it's not psychiatric. Like, is anyone else hearing this? Because I feel like this is just fucking demented. It's just so mad.
Of these new identities in many countries. A question, however, remains. What conferred continuity to his atypical gender identity development?
So this implies that we've all got a gender identity. That's what the implication is, that everyone develops a gender identity, and this girl developed a male gender identity, and what that therapy did is help her accept who she was. Is that what they're saying?
Maybe a neuroscientist would have something to say about this. This case shows that the combination of an exploratory and accepting attitude could be a good approach in terms of promoting well-being. In this case, the main focus of the work was the amelioration of the associated psychosocial difficulties. I later realized that these are present in a number of cases. Reflection on these cases led to the original formulation of the therapeutic aims in working.
Fucking hell. So this dude, on the basis of this very traumatized girl, did this.
Little shop of horrors, little shop of terror, call a cop, little shop of horrors.
He created, on the basis of an extremely traumatized girl who had witnessed violence, who felt that she shouldn't have been here, whose mother basically told her she'd been depressed since she was born, and the baby before her had died, and she felt that she always should have been that boy, which isn't unusual. For like, there's been a death, like a sibling death, and sometimes that can lead to a child thinking that they should replace, they can help their parents' grief by being the child that they lost. Like, fucking Jesus. And he created the therapeutic aims on the basis of that. And nobody stopped him. And there were people around witnessing this man's journey into this nut job kind of way of dealing with stuff. There were people that knew that this is how he did this, and they went along with it, and I just can't fathom why.
With children, with gender diversity, as we say today, and their family. And these are the therapeutic aims as they were summarized. There is a full description of them in my book, which was published.
So, to foster recognition and non-judgmental acceptance of gender identity issues. So, if I went in there and I said, I'm 14, I was raped, and I think I should have my vagina sewed up because I feel like I should be somebody who should have female circumcision. They'd go, yes. Okay, yes. To ameliorate associated behavior, emotional relationship difficulties, to break the cycle of secrecy, to activate interest and curiosity by exploring the impediments to them, so making them more curious about gender identity, to encourage exploration of the mind-body relationship. Well, fucking, oh my God. This is what I mean. It's really boring. It's really boring. And maybe that's how he did it. Because he didn't say, ta-da! He did it in this kind of, I am just a very kind man. I am like a Geppetto. And you will be a boy. You are a real boy. And don't worry about your nose. Like, is that what we're talking about? Allow the mourning process to occur. I would imagine that's to do with mourning, your parents mourning you. Promote separation and differentiation. Enable the child or adolescent and the family to tolerate uncertainty. Fucking hell.
1998, although maybe some part of it might be outdated. The first point was to foster recognition and non-judgmental acceptance of the gender identity issues.
Because he's going to last.
Then to ameliorate associated behavioral identity, and which is at times internalized by individual experiencing GD. It is also valuable to alleviate.
It's important to add that to list the need to combat stigma, which is often associated with the experience. Stigma is a really interesting one. Stigma and shame is attached to things like pedophilia. Like pedophiles would say, I'm not saying he's a pedophile, I'm just saying, pedophiles would say that the thing that harms children who have been raped by adults is the stigma. And if you can get rid of the stigma, you're all right. That child's fine. So if you can get rid of the stigma, if you can pretend that actually feeling uncomfortable and wanting to be something else, which is preposterous, if you can take the stigma and shame away from it, then everything's fine. Everyone's fine.
The feeling of shame that some children and adolescents and their family experience, and enable people to develop skills in handling social interaction and dealing with possible hostility.
This is how you join my cult. One infertile child.
This therapeutic approach is developmentally based, is not prescriptive, addresses the young person's distress, and aims at promoting well-being. It is not part of reparative or conversion therapy, but as element of affirmative therapy.
Affirmative therapy is like the green light on so much of this.
And I remember very vividly the bewilderment that this created when I presented this model at an international conference in 1992, because people were surprised that the service, which was specifically with children with gender identity disorders, as it was called at the time, had not as main aim to change the identity of this child.
(1992). Can you imagine? So everyone else, like, he gave a conference where most people thought, well, you're bloody insane, mate. And he stuck with it, with the NHS. You know, once you've got the NHS stamped on it, it kind of looks respectable. Once he opened the Tavistock JIDs, kids were screwed.
In one of the last sessions, after 2 years of exploratory therapy, Jennifer said that perhaps this form of help had come too late, and that her parents should have been aware of how she was feeling by the way she behaved as a child. She wondered why they had not sought help at the time. Jennifer's thoughts made me wonder why there was no service for children with these rare conditions.
Well, mate, it wasn't rare after you finished, was it? Was it, Domenico?
And unusual, but also distressing. And this planted in me the seeds for a creation of such a service. About 3 years after this, I saw
one person. Why would you do that? That's so weird. I had one patient who said this thing about a wish we'd had a service, so I made a service. This is just vanity. This is vanity. This is demigod vanity batshittery.
Jennifer around 85, 86. GIDS was established, as Polly said, in the Department of Child Psychiatry in 1989 at St. George's, and in 1996 the service transferred to the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust. Case 2. Britton, in his book Belief and Imagination, distinguishes between beliefs and fantasies. He states that beliefs have got consequences. They arouse feeling, influence perception, and promote actions. And of course, if beliefs about one's own identity will promote action, which might involve, for instance, wanting.
It's like he's saying, well, here's all the evidence. Here is all the evidence I've got, and it was a trauma, and then it was a fantasy. But what I did is I totally went off piste, and even with all this information that would lead most people to say, well, that was clearly a traumatized girl, and she's clearly not a boy, and I don't think we should encourage her to continue to think she's a boy because it's nuts. And he's like, no, I think we should. I think the right thing to do for somebody with a fantasy, with a delusion that there's something else as a response of trauma, I think we should just go with it. Let's create a whole industry around it. And the same with this. And I'm going to skip on. But fantasies, conscious or unconscious. So he's sort of saying, when you have a fantasy about your own identity, and he still ends up going with, let's follow the fantasy.
Reading an article by John Morris, who recently died. And the article
is there anything that this man is going to get right?
was entitled on the subject.
Thank you. Jan Morris was a man, according to his daughters, who was very, very abusive to his wife and daughters, and never gave up being a man at all. Just had a fetishy woman's body, but totally, like, still got writing, like traveled around the world writing. I think the feminist Julie Bindel said nice things about him when he died. It's very strange. It's all very strange.
Of living abroad. As he was talking about people like me, I thought I would read the article. And here she describes the psychological experience of some English people who had migrated to France. Today, we could call this experience the migrant dysphoria. She says, it is not just that I'm sorry for the French who are going to have to suffer the proximity of these cuckoos in the nest of the world. In a way, I'm sorrier for the English who are going to turn themselves into expatriates. All over the world, one sees them, the islanders, evading their heritage, looking for the London newspaper.
Can't listen to Jan Morris.
Which I show in a moment, was broadcast in around 1995, so more than 25 years ago. And would be interesting to see, what our guests also think about how actual the debate or the conversation which is going on in this family is relevant to today's situation. Mike, can you show the...
Lie ahead. I mean, if that's the general aim of this meeting, then.
So we were wondering, sort of, where do we go from here? What do we do from here? I mean, besides getting on with living, but I don't know. That's what worries me the most, is what the future holds for Bexy.
Bexy.
Sorry.
What do you? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
But because you made that remark, I thought that perhaps it was the moment to ask you, how do you like to be called now?
Now,
Mm.
I don't, certainly not Bexy.
No. What would you like us to call you?
I don't know.
We've kind of got past it because we just call Fred. But when I hear somebody else calling her Becky or something, then
Why do you say her too?
Sorry.
Fucking hell. So these are the look at those simpering twats. Why, if your daughter says, I think I'm a boy, what possesses you to say, do you know what, I'm going to take that seriously? Like, what possesses you to do that? Especially, I mean, I would think 90s, 80s, 90s. I mean, it's difficult to be a lesbian now, but 80s or 90s for a teenage girl, age 13, 14, realizing that she's a lesbian. I mean, unless you're a really special caliber of person, I'd imagine that's quite tricky.
Sorry.
That's the hardest bit.
It's the he and the she
bit.
because it's
Like, even
holds
that.
open
Oh, damn it.
people's trajectories.
Let me just, I'll find that again. Even that woman saying sorry to her daughter, the fact that in that room, that girl is being taken seriously and everyone's gone, what can we do for you? What can we do? Can we make you happy? Can we make you happy? I just want everything to be great. Just let's make it a thing. If the Tavistock didn't exist, if they hadn't started exploring this with, a load of like academics sat around going, what do you think? Oh yeah, we could really do something about that. Oh yeah, because we're really accepting and it's like new frontier. If there hadn't been those people, that girl would just be told, you know what, dress however you bloody want, call yourself Fred, we don't care, but you're a girl. And eventually you'll meet a girl and you'll have a romantic and sexual relationship with a girl and you'll go, oh, well, this is nice. Great, I'm a lesbian.
What your body says is different from what you feel inside you are. Like in this person, what he would like to be, because he would like to be French, is different from what his accent, at least. No other features.
Yeah, but I don't want to be, I don't like to be a boy.
You are a boy.
Yeah.
And which way do you see Fred going? More back to being
Just even that fixed thing, that, I mean, for a start, it's very childish. This idea that you can be, I am something, which you're clearly not, is very childish, isn't it? It's like the kid, like, no, it's my birthday. It's that. But that anyone is taking them seriously and not just getting on with it is.
a female or more to being a male?
What do you
Being more back to being
I mean, it can only ever be a guess.
Some
because
people say
nobody
that
knows.
with puberty they can turn back into being a female. Or how do you see
We get told Fred will grow out of it. We live with Fred every day. Fred grows into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fred grows into it because you all tiptoe around her and you make it a really big thing.
Fred has asked us specifically on several occasions to not call you Fred, but because you've always been called Fred ever since you were incy, but to say he and not she, and he's explained.
And what we've done, because we forgot our role as parents, is we've gone along with her every whim. That's what we've done.
That it really, really hurts when someone says she, and also it's ever so complicated if I introduce him as she, because people think I've gone mad. So
You sound as if you're just doing it.
Yes, because she is just doing it because you're patently a girl. And someone just needs to fucking say it. You just need to say it to these kids. No, I'm not going to do it because you're a girl and you can't force me when I gave birth to your tiny female body.
Because you've asked me to.
Yeah, one of the reasons. Why aren't you doing it for you?
Also for me, because eventually if you do go ahead and have all the treatment, I'm going to
And
look...
why do you use if too?
Well, all right, then when? I'm going to look pretty stupid if I'm the only person...
Mum, do as I say. Mum, speak as I want you to. Mum, think the things I want you to. Don't say it, Mum, because we all know I am a girl. But if you say it, Mum, then I know that people don't really believe me.
on the planet calling you she.
Oh, so it sounds as if you're just worried about what you do.
No, it's for you and for everybody. But what you need to understand is it takes some time for somebody like me to readjust. And I do try really, really hard because the last thing I want is to upset you.
Oh, I bloody would upset her. Jesus.
When she's on the phone to a friend, she referred to me, about me, as she. And it's as if she's doubting me.
And I want it now. I want her to say everything that I want when I say it, even when I'm not in the room. And I just want to make my mummy do whatever I want.
No, Fred, that was in one instance with another
No,
parent.
Mum.
That was, be fair. When I talk to my other friends like Gabby and Glynis, I say he, except when I make a mistake. But to that other woman I was saying she, but there was a specific reason for it.
My ears must
Girl doesn't have any boundaries, does she? She's just trying to find the boundary.
be going funny then.
Well, there was. Very much so.
But the important point that you're saying is that you feel that there should be no doubt about who you are.
Yeah.
In this case, that you feel you are a boy, and there should be no doubt that you are a boy. And when you pick up any doubt about it, or that people are uncertain about it, that's very upsetting for you.
Yeah. When you realize that it's bullshit and other people know it's bullshit. It's like the kid who lies. Do you remember, like, we've all had a kid at school who lies. I used to have a friend at school who used to pretend whenever we went on a school trip that his dad was we all went to a state school, and he used to pretend that his dad was a movie producer. And he used to tell girls that. And everyone would know. Like, clearly we all knew. And everybody knew. But no one wanted to say it because then you made him look foolish. And there was a girl who was a pathological liar. And she used to nick things from my house. But you wouldn't say it. You wouldn't say anything to her because you knew that kind of this false thing that she'd created, these lies, that if you took those lies away, there wasn't a lot left.
That is what you're saying.
And this man then based a whole system of affirmation, a whole fucking system that made it legitimate, that meant we sterilized hundreds of kids.
The interesting point here is, can you hear me?
Lie ahead. I mean, if that's
The interesting point here is that when Fred asks mother, to be called by to use a male pronoun, then the mother says, "I'm doing it for you." To which then Fred reacts and says, "Why don't you do it for yourself?" And I found that very interesting, because what Fred is saying is, if you do it for me, that means that you have another perception of me in your mind, which doesn't coincide with my perception. And so there is a request that the two perceptions should be the same. And of course,
No, there is a childish demand. I wonder if this man has children, because that's kind of cropping up for me right now.
this opens up the whole issue around mourning. I think in this situation, the fact that the mother or the parent in cases like this have to mourn.
Let's skip on. So now
Prepubertal children.
you have to mourn.
Children. Research shows that the gender dysphoria continues into adolescence. After puberty, persistence or continuity into adulthood is much higher.
Okay. So organizations which are more rigid or solid will contribute to the persistent continuity of atypical gender identity and development, while organizations that are flexible or fluid will lead shifts in gender identity. About 10 to 30% of pre-pubertal children, the gender dysphoria persists into adolescence. And once they're on the pathway, Domenico, it was incredible, and it was very difficult to come off. It would be rare to come off once you did this affirmation model. You complete demonic prick.
That would mean that,
skip on
of that particular individual, and therefore guide management. But of course, one could reach similar conclusion coming from another perspective.
Here's the third one then. So again, again, let me just tell you, let me just remind you. Domenico Di can't remember. So in fact, my stylish assistant messaged me to tell me how to pronounce it. Domenico Ceglie. Okay. Domenico Ceglie. He De Ceglie. He basically invented the transgender child. That's what he did. He invented this idea that once a child said that they thought they were the opposite sex, he invented this whole thing. He started the Tavistock. He started a clinic in somewhere called St. George Hospital in the psychiatry department. Then he opened the Tavistock GIDS, which is for children's service, in the early 90s, right? So he opened it. And the cases that he based it on were the early cases where he decided the affirmation model was a really good idea of saying, yes, you are whatever you are, is based on a girl who had extreme trauma. That girl there, Fred or something, a girl called Jennifer, whose mother had practically just been depressed her whole life, had been a victim of extreme violence. The brother before her older sibling had died, had miscarried. It was a boy, and then she wanted to be a boy. So you would think these early cases would inform someone, just inform someone that this is clearly an extreme case of disassociation or demanding. Like in that case, the mother was really not reluctant at all and was apologizing to the 13-year-old. I mean, it's for the rest of us, it would be that girl was a bit of a brat, probably a lesbian. And now let's have a look, because this is probably, I think this might be Jackie Green. Oh no, because he was called Jack. So let's see.
Case 3. Martin was referred to in the early 1990s to the Gender Identity Development Service at the age of 8 when he was attending a primary school. The educational psychologist reported that his mother said that he had told her when he was 7 that he wanted to be a woman when he grew up. He enjoyed dressing in women's clothing, and ever since he could walk, he liked to wear high heels and use tea towels to mimic long hair.
Oh, that's so unusual. Have you ever heard of a child doing that? God, that's wow. Well, I would take that child straight away to some sort of psychiatric care.
He was very fond of Barbie dolls, and his mannerism and style of walking were feminine. At school,
I can guarantee to you, I'm gonna put some money on there. I'll bet you 100 quid that feminine, that style of walking that was feminine would have been nothing like 8-year-old girls. Nothing.
He played only with girls. He lacked confidence and was teased by other children who called him offensive names. He suffered from symptoms of anxiety, including stomach upsets, dizziness, and headache. His mother did not encourage his feminine behavior, but was supportive. During the assessment at GIDS, we confirmed that Martin presented the feature of a well-established gender identity disorder, now we would call gender dysphoria or gender incongruence. His anxiety about attending school resulted in poor attendance, and he also experienced teasing on the estate where he lived.
Again, I'm just going to remind you, this is the man that poisoned the entire well, that started off the whole idea of a child's gender identity service in this country. This man, with this evidence.
Lived. He also had difficulties separating from his mother. At our server, we started working closely with the family, which consisted of Martin, his mother, his stepmother, and had meetings with the school to facilitate his attendance at school. 2 years later, Martin moved with his family to another town in England. Here, his wish to live in a female role became very intense.
At 8. He's only 8. Maybe he's even 10. But they're changing his name and everything now.
And the parents agree to let him live as a girl, expressed by dressing in female clothes and changing his name to Martina. In her new town, Martina became involved in individual therapeutic work with a community nurse in the local child and adolescent mental health service. A colleague and I continued to see the parents every 2 months to help them.
Okay, so now he's saying, I'm going to whiz on because he is quite boring. So now he's talking about how this small child, this like 8 or 9-year-old, basically does. Look at this slide. So they continue to coerce the parents, support the parents to continue to affirm this child as a girl when they're actually a boy. And then when Martina was 13, the social services department, well, they bloody wouldn't now, would they? Called a child protection conference as the school had become concerned that parental attitudes could have contributed to the development of Martina's gender dysphoria. After an investigation and a child protection conference, no child protection issues were found, and as a result, the mother was offered further supportive individual counselling for local services. So I suspect she was encouraging it. When Martina was 14, he unexpectedly announced that he didn't want to be a girl anymore and felt happier about being a boy. I wonder if he found a boyfriend. And then he lived as Martin. The next time he had physically developed a lot and clear appearance of a boy. And at the last professional family network, I asked Martin if he thought his parents had made the wrong decision. And he replied that it had been right at the time. So already 3 cases. One is already desisted. When? Probably when he got a boyfriend. Okay.
Such evidence to suggest which approach to children living in their preferred gender role social transition during childhood is best. Long-term follow-up studies, as I've mentioned, have shown that only a small proportion, up to 30% of prepubertal children presenting with the feature of gender dysphoria did the gender dysphoria.
So here, look, they acknowledge right back then that a very like only 30%, I would imagine it was less, but only 30% continue this gender dysphoria. And let's remember, I don't believe in gender dysphoria, but even if I did, let's remember that gender dysphoria then was really, really, really rare. Like he had 2 cases when like in St. George, it was only based on 2 cases that he decided, in fact, 1 case that he decided to do a whole service around it. And then that service found that actually when you help them go on puberty blockers and so on, they don't desist. They're on that pathway then. But I mean, he says it at the end. In fact, I won't let him read. The period between 10 and 13 years of age was considered to be crucial. Both persisters and desisters stated that the changes in their social environment, the anticipated and actual feminization or masculinization of their bodies, and the first experience of falling in love and sexual attraction had influenced their gender-related interest, behavior, feelings of gender discomfort, and gender identification. So they know this. So why would a service then continue a model of affirmation when all they have to say to parents is, look, after the age of 13, by the time they're 14, they've pretty much grown out of it. You can either sort of just manage it until then, but what we're going to tell your child is it really does iron itself out. It can be normal for some kids, end of story. But they didn't do that, did they? They made a whole affirmation model.
In 1990s, intervention. There is a risk.
So this is his conclusion. He tried to show how reflecting over a period of time on case material, as Bonnard did with the painting, artist, well, maybe some sort of artist, can allow a process of learning from experience, with kids. In the words of Bion, and contribute to the development models of care for different shapes of atypical gender identity. As clinical experiences, research, and evidence evolve, so will models of care. The management of gender dysphoria in a number of young people may require the young person and family decision making regarding hormonal intervention. There is a risk in our digital age and current climate that the process of evaluation and assessment becomes mechanical and simplistic. The role of therapeutic exploration may be to promote the development of autonomy and better informed decisions. Yeah, the decisions is no, don't do it. Don't interfere, for fuck's sake. If you know the majority of them, come the age of 14, desist. And in these, I don't believe the figures, but he's even saying only 30% carry on. Let's say he's right. So it's really extreme cases that get to the Tavistock anyway at that time. And only 30% of them continue after. Why would you introduce puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones? Well, puberty blockers in this country up to the age of 16. Why would you introduce that when you fucking know that the majority of them will desist? What sort of evil bastards are these people?
But as one looks a bit more closely, the individuality of each seed becomes more and more.
Delusions of grandeur. Let me just.
I would like to end with a metaphor which stimulates a reflection on the nature of gender diversity in children. Recently, the Chinese artist Ai Weiwei created an installation at the Tate Modern in London, which he called Sunflower Seeds. This extensive mass of seeds, 120 million, seen at a distance, look uniform and undifferentiated. But as one looks a bit more closely, the individuality of each seed becomes more and more evident. There are no two seeds which are the same.
Little shop of horrors, little shop of terror, call a cop.
And as you can see, this is quite an undifferentiated mass. Started to become more differentiated. And here you can see the difference between the seeds. This is Ai Weiwei. And these are the different.
Something wrong with this guy. Just incredible, isn't it? With this. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was expecting it to be something. But this idea that he's some sort of fucking artist, that he can compare himself to some of the most successful kind of groundbreaking artists, like, is mad. Who does he think he is? Well, he's the man that poisoned the well. That's who he is. I think I should probably leave Penny for another day. But that's who he is. He started this on the basis of one incredibly traumatized young woman. And on the basis of, even though he knew her, as he would call it, gender identity and gender dysphoria, he knew that was born out of a mother who was consistently depressed, a girl who probably knew from a very young age that the child that had gone before her had not survived, had died, and it was a boy. Extreme violence in the home, who was thought of as borderline, so borderline personality disorder, which is associated with trauma, and who he recognized didn't want to be a woman because he perceived women as weak. She perceived women as weak, and she sided with her father. Right, which we do see in houses where there is violence. The child will blame the mother who's being hit and not standing up for herself because it's too painful to focus on the monster, because you've accepted the monster. But you can't accept the person, you can't accept the adult who's supposed to look after you and themselves to put up with the monster. And he knew all of this. And because that young woman, and he says, he started thinking about her identity and mind and body and all this shit. And I'm reading his reasoning, and he must have thought about it a lot over the years. And I'm reading and I'm thinking, that would make me think not to make it a thing, not to affirm that she actually was a boy when you knew that the male identity was a way of protecting herself and trying to put a distance between her and extreme trauma. And it is this man that started the whole fucking Tavistock children's service. Him. He did that. And he's just told you his reasons why. And now we have the cast review. Nothing has changed. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. So bizarre. It's like going out into my garden, right? And it's got some really nice trees in it. And it's like chopping down one of the trees because I think it's diseased. And then finding out, actually, the tree hasn't got a disease, a contagious disease. It's going to kill all the trees. But chopping the other fucking trees down anyway. It's worth remembering that all of this stuff that we did to children was based on him. And it was all a lie. And he fucking knew it was a lie. And he wouldn't call it a lie. He would rationalize that the therapeutic answer to a child with extreme trauma was to affirm her delusion that she was something that she wasn't. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the Chelsea and Westminster is going to build phalloplasty fucking clinics and wards to do 200 phalloplasties a year at the cost of millions. That is why we've gone along with men having HRT. That is why we've gone along with breast binders in schools. That is why mermaids exist. That's why gendered intelligence exists. That's why your children are reading about this fucking shit in school. Him. That fucking man. Just, it's so disgusting. It's so disgusting. And it's unbelievable. And it's not even anything magic or wonderful or spectacular. It's just a fucking bored man who wanted to make his mark upon this earth. And in doing so, he has enabled the sterilization and the eradication of sexual function of tens, if not hundreds of children in this fucking country, and all the twats around him that enabled him. And oh my God, he should be the first up in front of some fucking stocks in the middle of a town square for us all to throw rotten fruit at. If you can speak the truth, even when all around you are fucking fantasists and liars, then I promise we will win. If you... Oh, God, it's so depressing. If you can help the things that we do here so that we can be the ones to call it out first, pretty much always first, then I promise we will win. And do you know why else we're going to win? Because I never lose.